Have you ever noticed how figures from centuries ago, we're talking kings, emperors, warriors, are suddenly all over modern political rallies? It's like the battle for our future is being fought on the battlegrounds of the past. So let's get into it and figure out why history has become this new political battlefield. I mean, just look at this. This is a quote from India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the 2024 election campaign. He's not debating economics or foreign policy. He's talking about a Mughal emperor who died way back in 1707. And trust me, this is not just some random history lesson. As we're about to see, it's a very specific, very deliberate political strategy. And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Seriously, why? Why are these kings from, the 1600s suddenly making headlines in the middle of a 21st century election? What's the point? And more importantly, what does history actually say when you peel back the layers of the story? Okay, so to really get this, we've got to start with a story that's, it's everywhere. The source we're looking at calls it the WhatsApp University version of history, and I'm guessing you've probably come across it in some way, shape, or form. And here's where it gets kind of wild. For this narrative to work, you need something the source calls doublethink. You know, from George Orwell's 1984, it's this mental gymnastics of holding two ideas in your head that totally contradict each other. Like, on one hand, you have the idea that Hindus were oppressed for 1,000 years. But at the exact same time, you're celebrating these incredibly powerful Hindu kings like Chhatrapati Shivaji, who were, ruling during that same period. How does that work, right? So at its heart, the story is super simple. It boils down 1,000 years of history into one big, long fight. Hindu versus Muslim. A clear-cut, us against them kind of thing. But does that simple story actually hold up when we check the receipts? Let's see. All right, so let's put this narrative to the test. Let's talk about Chhatrapati Shivaji. Now, the popular image is this saffron-clad warrior king fighting a holy war for Hinduism against the Muslims. But when you dig into the actual source material, the picture gets way, way more interesting. So you've got this myth, this idea of an all-Hindu army fighting a holy war. But the historical record? It tells a totally different story. The reality is, Shivaji's army, his entire administration, was packed with important Muslim figures. And we're not talking about small-time roles either. We're talking about people in positions of huge power and trust. And look, this isn't just some vague theory. The sources give us names. I mean, his chief of infantry, Nur Khan Beg. The guys running his navy, Darya Sarang and Daulat Khan. His artillery commander was Ibrahim Khan. Even his intelligence secretary was Maulana Hyder Ali. These are the people running the show. This is the backbone of his entire military machine. And it seems like this wasn't just a coincidence, it was actual policy. There's a direct order from Shivaji from 1669 that's crystal clear. Everybody is free to follow his religion, and nobody is allowed to disturb it. The source material even points out he had super strict orders that no one was to harm a mosque or disrespect the Quran during any military campaign. That's pretty telling. Okay, so that's Shivaji. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's look at his great rival, the guy who's almost always painted as the big bad villain of the story, Emperor Aurangzeb. And if you thought Shivaji's story was complex, well, hold on, because the contradictions here are even crazier. So, here's the big question the sources make us ask. Was this guy a temple destroyer or a temple patron? Was he this religious fanatic, or did he actually support other religions? The wild thing is, the history books say, he was both. All right, let's look at case A, Aurangzeb the villain. The evidence is definitely there. The source confirms it. He absolutely ordered the destruction of major temples in huge holy cities like Mathura and Varanasi. He hit Hindu traders with double customs duties while letting Muslim traders off the hook. And yeah, he's famous for bringing back the jizya tax on non-Muslims. It's all in the record. But then you have this stuff. The same guy also issued official orders to protect Brahmins from being harassed. He gave out tax-free land to support a Balaji temple in Chitrakoot. He gave land grants to Jain temples in Gujarat. He would even meet with Hindu saints and discuss religion. So what gives? How can both of these things be true about the same person? Well, the source brings up a really thought-provoking idea from historian Harbans Mukhia. He says, what if we stop looking at Aurangzeb as just a religious fanatic and start looking at him as a politician? Mukhia makes this really interesting parallel to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He points out how both men cultivated this public image of being a fakir, a holy person.
And he argues both seem to shift their words and actions between being communal and secular, depending on what the political situation calls for. It raises the question, were Aurangzeb's decisions really about faith, or were they about power and political strategy?
And this isn't a one-off thing. This kind of complexity shows up all over the place. Take another one of those legendary rivalries that always gets framed as a simple Hindu versus Muslim fight. Maharana Pratap against the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Just check out who was leading the armies at the famous Battle of Haldi-Gauhati. On what we're told is the Hindu side, Maharana Pratap's top general, the guy in charge, was Hakim Khan Sur, a Muslim. And on the so-called Muslim side, Emperor Akbar's army was being commanded by Raja Man Singh, a Hindu. I mean, come on. That one fact just blows the whole idea of a simple holy war right out of the water, doesn't it?
And here's a mindbender for you that really shows how complex the Mughals themselves were. You know that famous temple in Varanasi that Aurangzeb tore down? Well, it was built only a couple of generations before him under his great-grandfather, Akbar. And guess who supervised the construction? You guessed it, Akbar's Hindu general, Raja Man Singh. So the same dynasty had one emperor's general build a temple and another emperor tear it down.
Okay, so we've gone through all these historical details, but the big question is, so what? Why does any of this matter now? Why is it so important to pick apart these simple stories? Well, it's because the past isn't just the past. It's being used to write the script for our present. Let me leave you with one last really powerful number from the source, 31.6%. What's that? That was the percentage of Hindu nobles in Aurangzeb's government. And get this, that wasn't just a random number. It was the highest proportion of Hindus in power under any of the Mughal empires. That one single fact makes it really, really hard to stick with this simple story that he was only about oppressing Hindus.
And that really brings us to the core argument of the source material. This whole business of simplifying history, of squishing all these complex people and events into a simple us versus them cartoon, it's not just a bad history lesson. It's a political tool, a very powerful one, used on purpose to drive a wedge between people right here, right now.
So it all leaves us with one last thing to think about. The next time you hear a story about the past being used in a political debate, you just have to ask yourself a simple question. Am I listening to a record of history, or am I being handed a weapon for a fight that's happening today?